Hello and welcome to listen to this presentation. My name is Päivi Pihlaja and I am the national contact point for Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions in Finland, meaning that my task is to advise potential applicants and provide information about these calls funded by the European Commission under the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. And the objective of this particular presentation is to give an overview of the individual fellowships call in 2020, and so that after the presentation you will have a basic understanding of the features of this program. You will understand whether this is something that might be of interest to you, and you will also know how to proceed if you are willing to submit an application in this call. So you might be, for example, a scholar working at the moment abroad, but willing to do a research project in an organization based in Finland. You could also be a researcher at the moment based in Finland, but willing to do a mobility period in another country and possibly in another sector. Or you could also be a host or a scholar willing to invite someone to work at your department, in your research group, in a Finnish organization, and are looking for funding to do that. So I hope that after this presentation you will have an idea of what this funding allows to do and are able to proceed with your application. So the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions are part of Pillar Excellent Science, Pillar 1 of the Horizon 2020 framework program, which is the European Union's funding instrument for research and innovation, covering years from 2014 to 2020. And there are 5 Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. It's good to understand that this is not the only type of grant type of call under these actions, but there's funding, for example, for innovative training networks, for networks providing doctoral training and so on. But here we are speaking about individual fellowships, which is a call for more experienced researchers who apply for their own research project. Then to explain some basic features of the MSCA in general, what these actions are about. They first of all support researchers' career development through mobility. So mobility is an important part of any project and also a key requirement. And there's also a lot of stress on the career development aspects. So this is good to bear in mind always when planning your proposal, how to highlight the way that this project will improve your career prospects. The Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions follow a bottom-up approach, meaning that any research field is eligible. There are no topics, pre-defined topics or prioritizations in that sense. It's also open to any research or innovation ideas. It could be basic research, more market oriented take-up or so on. It's also open to all nationalities, so there are opportunities for everyone, any promising researcher, regardless of their nationality. It also covers different career stages. And I mentioned that in other cases, it might be doctoral training, but in individual fellowships, you have to be an experienced researcher. But if you have a PhD, then there's no upper limit as regards the research career stage or the scientific age of the applicant, at least at the moment in this 2020 call. And MSCA also supports cooperation and mobility between different sectors. So this is also a possibility for the applicants in the IF call to consider a host organization outside the academia or collaboration between different sectors. It's also good to be aware of the wider EU policies behind the MSCA and the Horizon 2020 framework program in general, in order to build and write a successful research proposal. It is good to understand the wider framework, why this program exists, what is the raison d'être of these different calls, and there you may find very helpful to get acquainted with the larger policy issues that these actions are meant to address. Next, I would like to move on to more specific rules applied to the individual fellowships call, also the eligibility criteria, and but also to explain a little bit further the objectives of the MSCA. First of all, the indicative timetable in this individual fellowships 2020 call. So the call was opened on the 8th of April, and the call deadline will be the 9th of September. And it's be very careful to check the right submission time. It's Brussels time, so take into account the difference between the time zones. And then the evaluation of proposals will take place in the end of 2020, and the information on the outcome of the evaluations usually comes in next February. And then the grant agreements will be prepared between the successful applicants and the European Commission. The starting dates of the projects themselves can be between next spring and even September 2022. So there can be even an 18 months delay, so to say, as regards the starting date. Depending on what you propose, you're actually asked to indicate this the time when you wish to start in your proposal. Now we come to the different types of fellowships. There are two types of fellowships in principle. First of all, the European fellowships. And the European here refers to the host organization where the research project is carried out. So in the case of European fellowships, this host organization is located in a member state of the European Union or a country associated to the Horizon 2020 program. It can also be mobility within Europe, so researcher moving from one European country to another, or it could be someone coming from another country outside Europe, any country in the world, and arriving to a European country to do their research here. There are also global fellowships. Here the global means that the host organization during the site where the researcher will be working is outside Europe, or rather these countries, the member states or the associated countries. So basically any country in the world where the researcher first stays during an outgoing phase and then returns to a mandatory return phase in Europe. Again, this refers to the member states and the associated countries, and in order to transfer the knowledge that they have gained to Europe. But going back to the European fellowships, there are different types of scholarships. There's the standard European fellowship from 1 to 2 years. But then there are some specific panels designed for researchers in a particular situation, career-wise, or in terms of their plans. So first of all, the Career Restart panel, which is meant for researchers wishing to return to research after not having been involved in research activities for a while. Then there's a reintegration panel meant for researchers who have spent time outside Europe and now want to return. And then there's the Society and Enterprise panel, which is meant for researchers who wish to spend or carry out the project in a non-academic organization. What is meant by experienced researcher? I already explained this earlier. As this is defined in the MSCA documents, it is someone who has at least 4 years of full-time research experience and or a PhD degree. So if you have already gained your PhD degree, you are automatically eligible. In some cases, also 4 years of full-time research experience could count towards the eligibility, but here the rule is in practice, it's applied quite strictly. So if you don't have a PhD degree, you should study very carefully the eligibility criterion. The European fellowships, where the host organization is in the European Union member state or associated country, as I already mentioned, they are available for all nationalities without any limitations. Global fellowships, where the researcher spends time at a partner organization in a third country outside Europe and then returns to a host organization in the European Union or an associated country. These grants are open for all EU or associated country nationalities without limitations. But you have to be a national or a long-term resident in these countries in order to be eligible. It's good to check the mobility rules and the eligibility rules in order to know what type of grant is the best option for you. Of course, if you plan to arrive to Finland to do your research here, we are speaking about the European fellowships. Then, in terms of eligibility, the mobility rule is very important. So, as I've already mentioned many times, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions are about mobility. So mobility is a key requirement, and you have to fulfill certain criteria also regarding the country where you have been working before and the country where you now intend to carry out this particular project in. So, for example, in standard European fellowships, it is defined that the researcher shall not have resided or carried out their main activity in the country of their intended host organization for more than 12 months in the past 3 years. So you must not have spent too much time working in the country where you want to go in order to define this mobility criterion. For example, if you have been working in Finland for the past 2 years or 4 years, something like that, then you would not be eligible to apply for a grant to do your research project in Finland, but you could move to another country to do this research. Whereas if you just recently arrived to Finland or have been doing research in another country for the past years, then you are eligible. Also, if you've been here for a little while, but not more than 12 months before the deadline. Under the European fellowships, there were these specific panels, and I would like to highlight that in some cases this mobility rule can be a little bit more relaxed. So in the case of reintegration panel or career restart panel, the researchers shall not have resided or carried out their main activity in the host country for 36 months more than 36 months in the past 5 years. And in the case of career restart panel, it is also required that you have not been active in research for at least 12 months prior to the deadline, because this was a panel and a grant meant for researchers who have not been active in the research but want to return to the research, to continue their research career. And in the case of reintegration panel, as I said, it's for those who want to relocate back to the member state countries, associated countries from another country outside Europe. And you also have to be a national or previous long-term resident of these countries in order to apply for these reintegration grants. Global fellowships, there the same criteria applies as in standard European fellowships. So you must not have studied or worked in the country where you intend to do your research for more than 12 months in the past 3 years. But this mobility rule, in the case of global fellowships, applies to the country outside Europe. So when there's the outgoing phase in a third country and then the return phase in Europe, so this criteria must be fulfilled with regard to the third country, the outgoing phase, but it is not applied to the country where you return then after this outgoing phase. So for example, a Finnish applicant, a researcher who has been active in Finland could apply for a global fellowship in outside Europe, but then return for this incoming phase to a Finnish organization. Then I've already applied this terminology that may or may not be very familiar to you. What we talk about when we mention these different country groups. So first of all, there are the EU member states, the 27 countries at this moment, since the UK has left the European Union. Then we have the associated countries, countries who have associated themselves to the Horizon 2020 program, and they participate in the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions on the same basis as the member states. And regarding the UK, I would like to mention that in accordance with the withdrawal agreement, they still are participating on the same in the same way as the EU member states in this upcoming call. If there are applicants who are interested in the UK destinations, then they can be in contact with the national contact points in those countries. Then there are the third countries, and by third country, this is a legal term referring to any other country than the ones that I already mentioned, the member states and the associated countries. So a third country could be any other country in the world. It could be United States, it could be Australia, it could be also any other country. And the beneficiary of the grant agreement, so this refers to the organization that will take up the management of the grant. It is always an organization from a member state or an associated country. So this is the organization that takes the grant and manages administratively the grant on behalf of the researcher. So for example, in the case of the global fellowships, it is the European organization that manages the grant still. So the participating organizations can be either from the academic sector or the non-academic sector. This could mean your host organization where you intend to carry out your project, or also other collaborating organizations, for example, offering secondment possibility for the researcher. So secondment means research stay in another organization than the host organization, different one than the one where you intend to be employed during the project. Secondments are not the same as short visits or field work. You can include all sorts of short visits to different countries, different organizations, but a secondment is a longer period of time spent at another organization, and it could be a tool for knowledge transfer or training opportunities that make sense in the light of your proposal. So they are optional, but in many cases they could be recommended precisely as a tool for knowledge transfer, for example. But in order to make sense, they must be meaningful and well appropriate and well justified. And secondments must take place in the member states or the associated countries. They can also be split into shorter periods, and when you look at the call guidelines, you can see that there are maximum amounts of time that you can spend on the secondment, depending on the length of your proposal or the project. On this slide, you can see a summary table showing the different types of grants and what kind of eligibility criteria are applied, and what kind of participating organizations can be involved in different types of projects. The financial overview of in individual fellowship projects can be seen on this slide. This is an individual grant for the recruitment of one researcher, the experienced researcher working in their own research project, and it supports their mobility, their research project, of course, and their training. So the funding covers the salary of the fellow, there's funding for travel, and funding for research costs as well. And this funding covers salary from 1 to 3 years, and travel, research, and management costs associated to the project. In MSCA, a simplified funding model is applied, so it's based on the use of unit costs, and 1 unit here means 1 person month. And on this table, you can see the amounts that the European Commission will grant for each person month of the researcher if the project if the proposal is successful. So there's a specific set amount for each person month. And here you can see, first of all, the costs of researchers and the seconded staff. So there's a living allowance meant for the salary of the researcher. There's a mobility allowance on top of the living allowance each month, since the researcher will be spending time moving to another country. So the 600 euros. And then there's a family allowance for those who at the time of the application deadline have family, so they are either married or have children that they provide for. So these 3 amounts are meant for the recruitment and the salary of the researcher. However, it is good to understand that this budget refers to the gross salary, so not the net salary. This is not the amount that the researcher will receive on their bank account, but all employer costs, pension and taxes and so on will be deducted from this amount. So it could be a fourth, a third, depending on the country, the national legislation and so on, how much is deducted. but this is the amount that the organization employing the researcher will receive to manage. In addition to these funds that are basically meant for the salary and for the researcher themselves, there's also funding for so-called organizational costs. So there's funding for research, networking, and training costs of the fellow, to allow them to for example, travel to conferences, participate in training, and to cover for their research-related costs. And then there's the management and indirect cost, which is meant for the organization. The living allowance is based on, there's a base rate of 100%, but it's multiplied with the country correction coefficient, depending on the country where the fellow will be working. And Finland, this coefficient is 120.8%. So the amount will be a little bit higher than this. So, but I would like to highlight the fact that there will be deductions. This will not certainly be the amount that you will receive as salary. But it's good to be in contact with your organization, the intended host organization, in order to learn more about what will be the actual net salary during the project. So now that we've gone through the basic features of the MSCA individual fellowships and the funding available, I would like to move on to planning and writing of an individual fellowship proposal. So before you start to write your proposal, it is good to pay attention to the expected impact of this funding. So what is expected to happen if this funding is being granted? What are you expected to explain in your proposal? So on the researcher level, what we are looking for is an increased set of skills, both research-related skills and transferable skills, that will lead to improved employability and career prospects, both in and outside academia. So the idea is that with this funding, you will increase your employability in the future, potentially also outside academia, and improve your career prospects. So the researchers are also meant to create knowledge and ideas that can be converted into products and services, and contribute to the knowledge-based economy and society in general. So there is this wider outlook on what a researcher will be able to do and how they will be able to contribute to the society as well. The expected impact on the organizational level is enhanced cooperation and stronger networks. So the fellow is also contributing to the networking, to the knowledge transfer between different sites, between different sectors and disciplines as well, and also boosting potentially R&I capacity among the participating organizations. And on the system level, there is the willingness to increase international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral mobility of researchers in Europe. The aim is to strengthen Europe's human capital base, gaining entrepreneurial advances in research training, and so on. So as I said earlier, it's good to understand also what is being aspired on the system level in order to write a competitive proposal. So the typical activities in an individual fellowship project may include some of the following. So by definition, it is an individual research project. So the fellow will be carrying out their own individual research plan. but the project may also include some supervision, teaching, and so on, depending on what makes sense in the particular case. And one cannot stress enough that it's about personal career development. So the fellow needs to present realistic and well-defined objectives regarding how they want their future to be, what kind of skills they will need in the future, and if this funding is granted, there will indeed be a career development plan written in collaboration between the host supervisor and the fellow, where these objectives are explained in more detail. So there's the training aspect, training through research at the premises of the intended host organization, meaning that the fellow will be collaborate closely with their named supervisor or the collaborator in the host organization. They will integrate to the local research community, and it doesn't really matter what career stage you are in. The training needs can be always applied and explained in the light of the needs that you have in this particular phase of the career. It is about developing and widening the skills and competencies of the fellow through hands-on training activities. So the training could be related to research skills, for example, methods or techniques. It could be expertise in multi or interdisciplinary matters, gaining intersectoral experiences. It could be transferable skills related to management or writing grant applications, setting up business opportunities, supervising, and so on. So there are a lot of options and ways to explain these goals. I would like to mention that there's also a possibility nowadays to do part-time work within the individual fellowships, but only in standard European fellowships, if this is agreed between the researcher, the fellow, and the host. And this means that on the side of the individual fellowship project, you could also pursue other activities like starting a business or doing other research project and so on. So, but this of course depends on each individual situation and whether it also makes sense from the point of view of the host organization. The proposal itself has mainly two parts. Part one is an administrative form, a technical online form where you fill in the general information regarding the proposal, the acronym, the title, duration, scientific area and descriptors and keywords, and the abstract. And there's also administrative data on the participating organizations and the researchers and supervisors involved, the budget and ethic issues table. Also, some sections where you explain the cause-specific questions like your eligibility. This is where you explain how you fulfill the eligibility requirements and if you have planned secondments during the project. And then there's the part B, and the part B is you could say that it's the actual proposal. So there's first of all the 10-page PDF where the applicant explains what they plan to do according to 3 different sections: excellence, impact, and implementation. I will show a little bit later what these cover. And then there's the part B2 where you also attach annexes like your CV, a table showing the capacities of the host institution or institutions, and ethical issues involved in your project or the research. Only in global fellowships there's a 4th annex, which is the letter of commitment from the host organization outside Europe. So as I said, part B is the main part of the proposal, where you, as an applicant, explain what is planned and how you fulfill the requirements of this call. So there's part B, which is the research plan itself, covering excellence. That means research training, supervision, and the researcher, your profile, and so on. Then there's the impact section, covering career development, dissemination, and communication of the research results and issues related to this, also very important. And implementation, where you describe in more detail the work plan, project management related issues, the resources that are available for carrying out this plan, and so on. And as you can see, the structure of the proposal, the plan, B1 reflects the evaluation criteria, which is also covers 3 sections: excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation. And here you can see more closely the evaluation criteria that will be applied and used by the external evaluator who read the applications and grade them. So there's, for example, under excellence, you have to explain novelty, the multidisciplinary aspects and gender aspects involved in the proposal, the quality of the training, transfer of knowledge, quality of the supervision or the integration in the team, and the potential of the researcher to reach or reach the professional maturity. And then there's also the impact, enhancing future career prospects of the researcher, the quality of the proposed measures to disseminate the project results and to communicate them to different audiences. And on the quality and efficiency, you have the work plan, you have the management structure and procedures, including risks and institutional environment. Also, in order to be able to write a very competitive, successful proposal, it is very important to be aware of other key considerations that concern the Horizon 2020 program in general. So these are important aspects that should not be negliged when writing the proposal, and it is important to study the background well enough to understand how you can make use of these topics in order to highlight the importance and relevance of your proposal. So one of them are the gender aspects, a section in the proposal that should not be underestimated. This is one of the cross-cutting priorities in Horizon 2020 program overall. So it involves, for example, equal opportunities perspective, gender dimension in the research content, for example, reflecting upon the subjects of your research or the end users who will benefit from this research and whether there are some gender related issues involved, and also the gender dimension in training activities if this is appropriate to your proposal overall. And another one concerns the ethical issues. In order to apply, you will need to perform a self-assessment exercise in part A, and also include an ethics strategy section in the section 6 of part B, where you will reflect upon the meaning of the ethical aspects of your research. So this is outside the 10-page limit, and you can use this space to provide a detailed strategy that will make your proposal even more competitive and well prepared. So it is crucial for all research domains that the applicants identify any potential ethical issues here and describe how they are planning to address these issues during their research. These are very important cross-cutting themes, and therefore you need to have sufficient background information about the requirements. So using the Horizon 2020 online manual on the Commission web pages, you can find about these issues. Also, the IP management is one aspect that is very important in the proposals within the Horizon 2020 and any successful project. So you need to be aware of the IP-related rules and explain how you intend to follow them. So here as well, there are some services provided by the European Commission that can help you with these questions. Then some general tips for proposal preparation, and these are quite simple in some cases that you need to follow when preparing any research proposal, such as starting early and making use of all the support that is available. You can begin by selecting the organizations that are best fitted to your particular aims and your research topic. Be sure that you will be able to explain in your proposal why this particular side of research is the right one for you. It's very important that you log into the application system at an early stage. It used to be called Participant Portal, but now it's the submission service. It is important to log in order to see what's in there, what sections you need to fulfill, and that you won't be stumbling on technical issues later on. You need to follow all guidelines, of course. It's good to begin by reading the guide for applicants and frequently asked questions on the Commission web pages. And also there are lots of success stories published either by the European Commission or other agencies. There are training videos provided by different actors, including other NCPs in other countries who have created materials to give a lively idea of what this action is about and how to prepare a successful proposal. You need to make sure that what you write in your proposal really matches the evaluation criteria of this particular call. I've already mentioned many times that in this call you highlight particularly the training and career development perspective. So there might be other calls where the scientific substance is highlighted more and you kind of focus on those aspects. But in this case, it is the career, the person behind the proposal who is kind of on the forefront and who is being described, their needs, their potential, and the activities that will enhance or enable to the full use of this potential in the future. You need to also honor the proposal structure. So read very carefully the guidelines. You can not attach any extra annexes and or use formulations or kind of anything that deviates from the general instructions. It might be also a question eligibility issue if you do not. And also one thing that might be overlooked but is very important is a well-written summary, because the summary both impresses the evaluators, but it also is used by the administrators to identify the best evaluators for your proposal. So it is very important that you are specific in this section that you describe your application in a way that matches what you actually propose, so that the evaluators that are chosen are really the experts or the best persons to assess. And also it is of course very important to surprise the evaluators in the sense of thinking out of the box, so to say, presenting innovative ideas in all parts of the proposal, and on the other hand, not to promise too much, because it might appear either over not realistic or and it's also important to understand that what you write in your proposal will be part of your grant agreement. So if you promise to do something and then cannot provide or cannot achieve, then this will need an explanation. So finding a good balance between the two, being innovative and showing real impact, but not overdoing it, is very important and enhances your chances. Then some technical issues about proposal submission. So I already suggested that it's very good to log into the submission system early. I would say maybe tomorrow, just to create a draft proposal and see how it looks like. You will be then able to write your actual proposal in liaison with the beneficiary organization. It's very important to involve the supervisor, that is the contact person and collaborator at the organization, and also the administrative staff of the organization, because they can provide you with very important information, both administrative and relating to the working environment. So you need, for example, the identity code of the organization that they use when submitting funding applications to the European Commission, and you will need a draft acronym, a draft summary, choice of panel, and so on. You will be able to share access to the proposal between the fellow and the beneficiary and the supervisor. It's, as I said, it's important to involve all parties and also to prepare the supervisor or the beneficiary to submit this application on behalf of the fellow. The proposal has two parts, as I said. So there are both the administrative forms that are completed online by editing the forms directly, and then there's the part B, where you will be able to download a template for the part B1, the actual proposal, and then you can upload the documents as PDF and attach them to your proposal form. There will be different sorts of submission system checks where you need to validate forms. You can print the preview and so on. And also it's very good to understand that you can continue editing your proposal even after you have submitted it. So you can submit it once and then edit it more and submit again until the deadline. And by doing this, you will ensure that there will be one version in the system, even if some technical issues emerge. It's only at the hour of the deadline that the European Commission will then take the latest version in the system and take this version to the evaluations. And this is just one of those favorite slides where you can illustrate how important it is to avoid the last minute submission hurdle because it shows how at the last minute of the call, the submission rates really rise up, and it may be that some technical issues emerge or some network issues, something that you can't foresee, and then you can't really do anything about it anymore. So this is just to highlight the importance of the last point, that you should try and submit a version of your proposal as early as possible and not leave it to the last moment. Some things about proposal evaluation as well. So the proposals will be evaluated in 8 scientific panels. There's chemistry, social sciences and humanities, economic sciences, information science and engineering, environment and geosciences, life sciences, mathematics and physics. So you choose one of these, and then each of the panels form their own priority lists of proposals that have been submitted and then evaluated and graded by external evaluators. And there are also 3 multidisciplinary panels to correspond with the different types of grants, which we have already discussed: the Career Restart panel, the Reintegration panel, and Society and Enterprise panel. It can be also that if you have chosen one of these, the commission staff, the research agency executive agency staff in Brussels may move some of the applications to another panel if they see that actually what is being proposed matches or belongs to another panel. But also the applicant, it's very important that the applicant considers and chooses the right panel for them. The evaluation process goes as follows. Each proposal is evaluated and graded by at least 3 external experts who are called to give their assessment. Then there are priority lists formed under each panel, and then the best ranked proposals in each panel will be funded. There will be also, in addition to this main list, main listed projects which are funded first. There will also be a reserve list for each panel. And the initial allocation of proposal to different evaluators is based on keywords matching. So it is very important to choose your descriptors and keywords carefully and reflect upon what they tell, because this is how the administrators in Brussels then choose the evaluators for you based on this information. And the experts then can also assess their own expertise for proposals suggested to them. Either they have generalist expertise, specific expertise, no expertise, or a conflict of interest that they can declare. But an applicant should bear in mind that they should try to address both an expert or a generalist equally, because you know that you might have both in your so-called audience among the evaluators, and then it might be also important to address the real expert and make sure that they are convinced. Statistics. So on this slide you can see the number of submitted proposals. That is the proposals that were eligible in the last IF 2019 call, and then the ones that were main listed, which means the ones that were funded in the first phase. So we can see that altogether there were 9,709 proposals evaluated in this call. So it's a huge call. I believe it's by far the largest one ever managed by the European Commission and its executive agencies. And out of this number, 1,475 proposals were retained for funding in this first phase. You can see also the success rates in different panels. And there's the standard European fellowships, and then the smaller Standard European Fellowship being by far the largest one, where most of the applications are, and then we have the smaller panels, the special panels with slightly higher success rates. Then you can see also the figures for Finland. You can see that the success rates have been quite the same in proposals submitted by a Finnish host organization, and it's a little bit over 10% each year. And this, of course, reflects a bit or the type of scholarships that have been applied for most of all. So the standard European fellowships being the most frequent one. So on this slide, you can see the panels and their cutoff scores. That means the points above which the selected proposals were funded. And so this is the line in white. You can see the points out of 100 that you needed to have in each panel in order to be funded. And with green, you can see marked the funding range as well. So this is taken from statistics published by the European Commission in their funding and tenders portal. You can go there to look for more information and more statistics if you're interested. And then finally, some slides showing where you can find the official call text and guidelines. When you go and look for the documents, you can first of all observe that there's what you call the work program. This is like a general document where the different calls that have been planned are explained, and their main eligibility criteria and the main framework is given here. So it's a general document. You have one for MSCA as well, which is updated or has been updated quite regularly. But then, more specifically, you should go and look for the guides for applicants, which are published for individually for each call. So there's a new one, Guide for Applicants, Individual Fellowships Call 2020, where you can find all the most important elements, the criteria, everything that's relating to this call and that you should know before starting to write your application. So please go and look for this document, and then also extend your searches to the general guidance in Horizon 2020, where you can find more information about what the terminology used here means, or how to address the ethics or gender sections and so on that are overarching issues for all of these calls. And on this slide, you can find some links to useful websites. First of all, there are the European Commission websites for Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions and Horizon 2020 in general. Then we have a link to the Funding and Tenders portal containing all the call guidelines, and a link to the submission portal. So you should go to this website and look for MSCA IF 2020 call, and you will find all the information there. Then I've included also a link to the website of UT, which is coordinating the actions of us, the national contact points in Finland, with regard to the different Horizon 2020 goals. So you have some information on Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions in Finnish on this website also available. And then one tip regarding materials advising on how to write a successful proposal is the handbook by Net for Mobility Plus project. This is a project where different NCPs from different countries have participated and created a handbook advising applicants how to what to consider and how to write a successful proposal in IF. And well, the version 2020 hasn't been published yet, but it's coming soon. And in the meanwhile, also the handbook from last year is very useful because there hasn't been very many changes. And now we'll come to the last slide containing my contact information. If you have any further questions or would like to have more information about what we've presented, I've also included the contact information of my colleague participating as the program committee delegate for Finland in preparation of these calls and their guidelines. But most of all, I would like to underline how useful it is to be in contact with your local host organization, the planned organization where you intend to work, to be in contact with your academic collaborators, and also, and perhaps in particular, with the research services of that organization, because they will be able to advise you with all sorts of administrative details and give you information about the local research environment, working environment, and so on, which is information that you most certainly are interested in and will also be using when writing your application and explaining the integration to the host organization. So it's very important to be in contact with them early on. But now we've come to the end of the presentation. So I thank you very much for your attention and hope that you've received the basic information that you need in order to proceed with your proposal preparation. I hope that you will be able to submit in this next call, and urge you to be in contact with us if you have any questions. So good luck and perhaps hear from you. Bye bye.